This is the call to order, obviously. This is a meeting of the Gettysburg Zoning Hearing Board. We have one hearing, or continuation of a hearing scheduled for this evening. For the record, it's 7:01, I think, on 7:01, July 12, 2023. And again, for the record, this is a public meeting, but it's conducted pursuant to very specific rules as a hearing, and they will be explained shortly by our board solicitor. Could everyone present make sure that you've signed in on the attendance sheet, and please be sure to include your address. Please don't step over there to do that, please. As I said, this is a continuation of the hearing that began June 28. The first thing we do as a matter of procedure is introduce the zoning hearing board members and determine that we have a quorum. So could we please start?
Darlene Brown.
Darren Glass.
Michael Berkner.
Roger Goodacre.
I'm John Butterfield.
Okay, we have 5 members present. That's all the board members, and obviously a quorum is present this evening. Then I would like to introduce the other people at the principal table here. The board solicitor is Mr. Matthew Teeter from Teeter Law offices in Gettysburg. Our ZHB, the zoning hearing board stenographer this evening is Ms. Karen Brown. She's taking notes right now. We also have with us the zoning officer, Ms. Carly Marshall, who's the director of planning and zoning and code enforcement for the borough. And before we begin, there's one small administrative matter just for us internally. It should just take 30 seconds or so. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes of the meeting of April 26th?
Yes.
Okay. Are we, any additions, corrections, Khalees? Okay. Could I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve.
Second?
Second.
Second, okay. That was seconded by Mike Berkner. Any discussion at all? No. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, meetings from the minutes of the April 26th meeting are approved. And secondly, for the record, there are no current outstanding decisions of the board. Okay. The case before us this evening is zoning hearing board case ZHB 23002. It's the application of the 501 Richardson Acquisition LLC. At this point, I'm going to turn to the solicitor and ask him to please address the board procedures and the conduct of the hearing moving forward.
I have a pre-hearing brief that I usually read at the beginning of a zoning hearing board hearing. I did go over this at the beginning of the hearing on June 28th, but since we have a lot of people in attendance tonight that were not here on June 28th, I want to just review some of the things and describe how this hearing is being conducted. The zoning hearing board is a quasi-judicial entity, somewhat like a court of law, which exists to ensure the equitable application and administration of the Gettysburg Borough zoning ordinance enacted by the Borough Council. This is not a legislative body. The board must apply the zoning ordinance as written. The board cannot modify or ignore provisions of the ordinance or other applicable law in order to reach a decision based on personal preference or public pressure. The applicant, the parties in interest, and the zoning officer, and any other witnesses will be testifying under oath and have testified under oath, and a verbatim transcript is being made. Because a verbatim transcript of this hearing is being made, it is important that only one person speak at a time, and those permitted to participate in the hearing do not speak out of term. Mr. Goodacre, who's the chair of the board, is tasked with maintaining order, and I will certainly assist in that as necessary to keep us on track so that we can move forward expeditiously. This hearing began on June 28th. The applicant has presented its case in chief, and we are going to be resuming with the borough zoning officer, Carly Marshall's, any presentation that she wants to make to the board. She will also be subject to cross-examination regarding what she presents by the board, by the applicant, by any other people who have been granted party and interest status. Then each person that's been granted party and interest status will be permitted to present testimony and evidence, and each party and their witnesses will also be subject to cross-examination by the applicant, the board, and other parties in interest. Pursuant to our rules, we do provide an opportunity for the applicant and each party to provide sort of some follow-up, what might be termed as a rebuttal, just to touch on any things that have been presented by other parties and make sure that everybody has an opportunity to present what they need to present. Those who were sworn at the June 28th beginning of this hearing remain sworn and will be testifying under oath. Any person who is a witness who provides testimony who was not sworn in on June 28th, please, we'll try to confirm that as people speak, but if you weren't sworn in, you'll need to be sworn in before your testimony. There's one application that we're considering, but there's several requests for relief in this application. There's a request for special exception and a request for several variances. Traditionally, with respect to each variance, the applicant must generally provide sufficient evidence on the record to make findings that the zoning ordinance inflicts unnecessary hardship on the applicant. The board can only grant a variance if the 5 criteria found in section 271704A of the ordinance are met. The exception here is I know that the applicant in their case in chief had presented the variance with respect to the transit building as a de minimis variance, which has slightly different criteria applicable to it. For a special exception, the applicant must provide the board with sufficient evidence on the record that the proposed use will meet both the general standards for a special exception found in section 271704B to the extent they are applicable, and the specific criteria for the proposed use, which is mixed-use building extended height, and those criteria are found in section 271524. If the board approves any request for a variance or special exception, the board is permitted to attach reasonable conditions as necessary to ensure compliance with the ordinance. Although zoning hearings are somewhat informal as to evidence and process, the board will not permit testimony that is not relevant to the application. We talked a lot at the last portion of this hearing about things that happened in 2008 when this ordinance was passed. This board cannot do anything about what happened in 2008, whether board members agree with it or not. We have to apply the ordinance as written. This is not, as I said before, it's not a legislative body. I also want to point out that based on some publicity, I think it's fair to the board members present here, there was some talk and some publicity and some articles in the paper about the board reaching out to GMA or to other organizations in the community. Think of the board as sort of a judge and jury. A judge in a case does not go out and decide who the witnesses are going to be and do the fact-finding on their own. It is up to the parties to the matter to present evidence, and they either meet their burden or they do not in presenting that evidence. The board does not have an investigative function. It would be improper for them to contact somebody from Gettysburg Municipal Authority or any other various entities. They are here. Whatever evidence is put on the record is what they can consider, not outside stuff. So I just want to keep that in mind in fairness to the board, just so everybody understands. They haven't been remiss in their duty by not going out and contacting these other entities. That's not their job, and that would be improper. So I want to make that clear from the outset. The last thing that I wanted to touch on here is at the last portion of this hearing on June 28th, there were 5 people who sought party and interest status and were granted, and so they timely entered their appearance before the board. I mentioned at that time when we got their names and addresses, but I had mentioned that I had forgot to bring my entry of appearance forms, so I do have those tonight, and I ask that those 5 people come forward and, just before the end of the night, please fill these out and pass them back up to me. That would be Walter Barlow. Scott Hill, who I understand is not present, but we do have his contact information. He had out of the country, I believe, but was granted party status. Linda Atea, Brian Hodges, and Leonard Barrett. So if you're here today, please come forward and I'll give you party and interest forms for you to fill out with information. Is Walter here today? And is Leonard Barrett here today? I'm pretty sure that Scott Hill cannot be here today based on what I've been told. Okay, with that, turn it back over to Roger.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Teeter. Just for the record, could the applicant and the attorney just identify themselves so that we're on the record as being here?
Sure. Kurt Williams, representing the applicant, 501 Richard Acquisitions, LLC. I'm with Salzman Hughes in Carlisle.
Tim Harrison, manager, 501 Richardson Acquisition. Yeah.
Thank you very much. As Mr. Teeter suggested, we're now going to move, the applicant and the attorney presented their case at the initial portion of this hearing, and we're now going to move to the next portion of the hearing, which is a presentation by the CEO and zoning officer. Please.
One question, Mr. Chairman,
Oh,
if
sure,
I may.
please.
If I may.
Yes.
The zoning hearing board's grown by one person since we were here 2 weeks ago, and I was wondering what Mr. Berkner's status is going to be in terms of making a decision in this matter since he missed the first hearing. There are ways around that, but I just wanted to know what the board's position was.
The board's position on that, and we've confirmed this with Mr. Teeter, is that Mr. Berger can participate in tonight's hearing, fully participate, but he will not be a voting member when it comes to a determination by the board.
Okay, thank you for clarifying
That's
that.
where we are. Okay, then I'll turn it over to Ms. Marshall.
So the zoning hearing board has already received the memo from the zoning officer. This was emailed to members on June 22nd, 2023. At the same time, it was posted to the Gettysburg Borough website as an attachment to the agenda for the June 28th hearing. And so I'm going to actually give copies to the parties of interest who have not already received copies. Yep. I think you have a copy.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah. So contained in this memo is the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code timeline and where this application falls in with this timeline, essentially the procedural standards for this application. The applicant, some of this was covered in the last meeting, but I just sort of wanted to reiterate that the applicant was notified of the June 28th hearing via first-class mail on June 20th, 2023, after a complete application was submitted to the zoning officer on June 1st, 2023. The hearing was advertised in the Gettysburg Times on June 13th, 2023, and June 20, 2023. The agenda and the aforementioned packet, again, was emailed to the zoning hearing board on June 22nd, 2023. The 17 adjacent property owners were notified of the hearing via letter mailed first class on June 22nd, 2023. And the property was clearly posted with 8 signs on June 21st, 2023. And I'd also like to enter as an exhibit the sign list of mailed notices, including the 17 adjacent property owners that were provided notice, as well as a copy of the letter that was provided and the attachment to that letter. I don't know what.
Do you have stickers?
I can bring stickers in the inner.
Is this collectively Board Exhibit 1?
I think we had done board exhibit.
Say Borough 1 and 2. That's how we did it last time.
I think to answer your question, we had previously introduced, without objection, Board Exhibit 1 was the June 20th letter to the applicant, with notice of the hearing. the proof of publication in the Gettysburg Times, which ran on June 13th and June 20th, and a copy of the notice that was posted on the property. We're going to, I think, mark the memo from Carly Marshall to the Borough of Gettysburg Zoning Hearing Board with the information about the list of mailed notice and a copy of the notice as Borough Exhibit 1.
So I'm sorry for the confusion, but maybe these things are in different packages as they were just distributed, but does Board Exhibit 1 start with the list of addresses of neighbors? That package?
Borough Exhibit 1 is
Is the memo.
the memo that is the
No,
list
you're right.
of, and I might have gone out of the order that Carly stated, but I got it marked already, so we're going to clear this up.
Thanks.
Borough Exhibit 1 is the June 22nd memo from Carly Marshall to the Borough of Gettysburg Zoning Hearing Board, and it's regarding the signed list of mailed notices, and it has a list of the surrounding properties who were mailed a notice of the June 28th hearing, and attached to that is a copy of the letter that was sent.
Okay, that's Borough 1.
That's Borough 1. Borough 2 will be the June 21st memo from Carly Marshall to the Gettysburg Borough Zoning Hearing Board. That has, it's sort of her, Carly's background information about the property and the application. Just with information, it's, I don't know how many pages total, it's the thicker memo.
Okay, that's Borough 2. Is there a Board Exhibit 1 then?
Yeah, Board Exhibit 1, and I can get you a copy of it, but it was a copy of the letter to 501 Richardson
Yeah, that I don't have.
Acquisition LLC, a copy of
Proof of
the
publication.
proof of publication.
Yeah, that I don't have yet.
Okay. I'll get you a copy of that, and a copy of the, what was posted on the property.
Okay, so the memo also details the dates of the reviews for the Planning Commission, Borough Council, and Harbor Review that were previously admitted into evidence by the applicant at the last hearing. It also has the proposed application, also reviewed at the last hearing, and provided a brief site history, which included a de minimis variance granted to the Transit Authority for variance from the minimum height restriction. That's also included as an attachment to this memo. That also was included as an attachment to the agenda to the June 28th meeting. So all of these are public documents. And then finally, it includes the relevant sections of the zoning ordinance, including definitions, district standards and performance standards, and standards for zoning hearing board action. My presentation.
Nothing further at this point. Thank you for that presentation. And at this point, the applicants are free to cross-examine or pose questions to Ms. Marshall.
I just have one question. Ms. Marshall, the last time we entered Exhibit A2, which is copies of 3 different correspondence addressed to the Zoning Hearing Board, one from the Gettysburg Planning Commission, one from Borough Council, and one from the Harb Board, correct?
Correct.
Is it fair to say or reasonable to say that the Planning Commission's recommendation that, or statements that they do not object to the granting of the special exception, the granting of the various variances that we've requested, is the position of the borough with regard to our application?
Yes, insofar as the planning commission is an appointed body of the borough, I would say yes, that would be the position of the borough.
Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you. At this point, any of the objectors have the...
Did Borough Council make a recommendation?
So-
Did they present to Borough Council?
The application was presented to Borough Council. Borough Council provided comment. Well, one Borough Council, I should clarify, one Borough Council member provided comment.
The application was, but they presented at the Planning Commission. So your answer to Attorney Williams stating that Borough Council also agrees with the recommendation of planning?
That was not my statement.
Okay, can you please clarify?
So my statement was, insofar as the planning commission is an appointed body of the borough of Gettysburg, the position of the planning commission is the position of the borough.
Can you repeat that, please?
Insofar as the planning commission is an appointed body of the borough of Gettysburg, the position of the planning commission is the position of the
Doesn't make
borough.
any sense to me.
And I'll comment that their presentation was never presented to Borough Council.
This is not, I object to her comment at this time. This is a time to ask questions of the zoning officer, not to make comments.
Yeah, and I want to just reiterate that you will have an opportunity to present
Mhm.
all of this. For now, just restrict to questions. And if you disagree with any of her answers or want to clarify it on your own case in chief, or when it's your turn to present, you can do that. Just restrict to questions for
So
now.
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Did the applicant present at Borough Council?
The zoning officer, as per the requirement of the zoning ordinance, forwarded the application to Borough Council, Harb, and Planning Commission. The applicant attended the meetings of Planning Commission and Harb, was unable to attend the council meeting.
And for the record, Linda, could you identify yourself?
Sorry about
For the
that?
record, could you identify yourself, Linda, for the...
I need your name.
Just let her know your name.
Did you
Linda Atiyeh, Atiyeh.
Thank you.
Ms. Linda is an interested party for these purposes. Okay. Does anybody else, any other interested party have any other objector have any questions for Ms. Marshall? Not at this point. Okay. I have a quick question for you, Ms. Carlisle. I was going to say, now we turn to the board. Quick question. There was some discussion last time about one of the special exception requirements being internal parking. And the applicant indicated that there had been a discussion of that. I want to restate, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my recollection is that I'm not quite sure who it was, but identified that your parking lot would qualify as internal parking to the buildings. Does that track with?
There were discussions between the applicant's engineer and borough zoning officer about the parking, the lower level parking
Parking,
deck, and
yes.
how it's connected to buildings B and C, and that the determination of the zoning officer at that time was that it qualified as internal parking.
Okay, I just want to confirm that with Carla.
Yes, so and I'll just, for everybody's benefit, I'll reiterate the standard as it is also included in my memo. Internal, to qualify for the increased extended building height incentive for the site improvement, an applicant shall provide 25% of the required parking area pursuant to the various sections of the parking chapter within a building housing one or more permitted uses. The intent of this standard is to minimize surface parking area and maximize building area. The expert witness provided testimony that the proposed parking deck is structurally integrated with 2 buildings on the site housing 1 or more permitted uses. This innovative design meets the intention of the ordinance to maximize the building area and to minimize surface parking, as was my communication with Mr. Tweedy at that time.
Okay. We just want to confirm that had come up, given the language says internal parking. You know, I mean, specifically says that. Okay, just wanted to confirm that. Okay, are there any additional questions from the applicant or anyone else for Carly at this juncture?
I think
Or Ms.
Brian's
Marshall
any
at this
other-
juncture?
Oh, I have no questions.
Okay.
I guess next would be, I don't know if you want to let the Ms. Attia and Mr. Hodges decide who wants to go next.
Okay. Well, at this point, the next item on the agenda, or the next step on the agenda, is for the objectors to formally identify themselves and present their cases. It sounds as if, well, Linda, you're obviously representing.
Yeah. If I can go first, is that okay? Sure.
Entirely up to you. Entirely up to Linda.
I just wanted to note we do have community media here tonight, and so if you could either go to the podium or sit at the
Well-
table that's mic'd,
Well-
so that they can hear.
That's what I was going to suggest. After you
Sorry.
make a determination about who's going to present themselves, if you could come to the table and.
Is it a preference which podium or?
Do you care, Ms. Attia?
I'm sorry.
Do you care if Mr. Hodges goes?
No, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Mr. Hodges, why don't you go? And just for the record, you were sworn at the June
Yes.
28th?
Yes.
And you remain sworn?
That'd be
Yeah.
fine. That'd be fine.
So we can hear you, Brian.
And should I go to the podium then? So my back is not to everybody?
Sit there so we can hear you.
I think as long as you
Podium, Brian.
Podium, they're telling me that. Brian.
Like Price is Right.
Well, we can, can you hear okay?
Okay. So I'm Brian Hodges. I live at 137 Ridge Avenue in Gettysburg, and I own businesses on York Street in downtown Gettysburg also. So first of all, I'm not a lawyer. I'm a concerned citizen, a business owner, a resident of Gettysburg, and I'd just like to give some testimony and ask a couple questions, if I may. First, the applicant has applied for a special exception for extended height. It has not, however, applied for or presented any testimony or documentation to meet the evidentiary requirements for the 12 general criteria required for special exceptions. These 12 general criteria are found on the second page of the special exception application 3A through L. They're also found at section 27-1704B, A through L. As set forth on the third page of the special exception application, unless the answer is yes or not applicable to all of the above questions, 3, A through L, and evidence in the form of testimony or documentation is provided, the zoning board cannot grant a special exception. Accordingly, the application as submitted fails on its face since it's not complete. Furthermore, the special exception for height sought by this application cannot be considered until the applicant has applied as required under the ordinance, including the 12 general criteria. Applicant seems to be saying that variants are requested for most of the 12 standard required for a special exception, but of course variances cannot be granted because someone has requested them. An applicant for a variance must show both A, unnecessary hardship, and B, consistency with the public interest. A variance to not comply with the 12 standards for a special exception, all of which are concerned with the public interest, would be entirely inappropriate. Among those 12 standards for special exceptions are that the proposed use is consistent with the general and supplemental regulations set forth in Part 15. Part 15 states, 1, no use or activity shall be permitted that would create a dangerous, injurious, noxious, or otherwise objectionable situation. Specifically, a use or activity shall not, among other requirements, G, create an undesirable or dangerous traffic condition on the street or in a nearby area, or generate a nuisance to any nearby properties because of increased traffic. H, create any other objectionable condition which will endanger public health and safety to be detrimental to the proper use of the surrounding area. Any argument that a variance can be granted for the above mandates would be absurd, as they clearly bear a substantial relation to the health and safety of the community. They cannot just be summarily ignored or treated as if they can be erased by a variance. Rather, the burden is on the applicant to provide testimony and documentary evidence so that the board may consider the standards as mandated by the ordinance. This application must then be denied if it can be shown that the approval would be detrimental to public health, safety, or general welfare. To that end, I prepared a statement as to the traffic conditions which will be impacted by this development. I do have evidence. Do I take that to you, Mr. Teeter? Evidence?
Do you have copies of it?
No.
Okay.
Well,
Show it to the applicant first.
hey, this is 7 pages long, pretty much single-spaced. If Mr. Hodges is going to be referring to it during his testimony, I'd like to have a copy of it so that I can follow along. And, I mean, this is part of the responsibilities of a party to come prepared.
I have a copy you can have.
Ms. Marshall can make a copy real quick. She said it'd take less than 3 minutes. She can make some copies. You make,
Well, we need them too. Yeah.
Maybe in the meantime, we could have an offer of proof.
like 8 copies maybe, or more, 10. Sure. Mr. Hodges, do you want to make a proffer? What does the document that you're going to present contain in summary?
Traffic studies, and in the Adams County 2019 Central Adams County Joint Comprehensive Plan. It's from that.
Is it appropriate to ask a question now about this offer of proof? Maybe this is not a relevant evidence.
Are you objecting to its relevance?
I am. Well, can I ask a question first about its relevance?
Yes, please.
Mr. Hodges, was the traffic study that you're proposing to introduce as evidence, was it prepared specifically for this project or with this project in mind?
It's not for this project.
And when was it prepared?
2019.
And did you participate in its preparation?
No.
Are you a traffic expert in any way?
Oh, no, I'm not.
So you're proposing to introduce hearsay testimony of...
I'm actually going to read what their statement was. So
Right, and I am unable to cross-examine the authors of this study. So in that respect, I'm going to object to it because it's hearsay and I'm not able to cross-examine the authors of it or to inquire in any detail about the traffic study, which was not prepared with this project in mind or even relevant to this project. It seems to be a county-wide or maybe Gettysburg-specific traffic study, but not really relevant to this particular project at this particular site.
Okay, your objection. Mr. Teeter, what's your opinion on that?
Without knowing more about what exactly it says, I just remind the board that the rules of evidence don't specifically apply in zoning hearing board cases. The rules of evidence, I mean, what can be admitted is somewhat lax. You can sustain the objection within your discretion, or you could overrule the objection and admit it, but with the understanding that you would give it the weight it deserves based on the fact that it is what it is,
Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on that?
I think Mr. Teeter says it about right, that let him say what he needs to say and weigh it for what it's worth.
Is that the consensus of the board? Yes. Okay. Then
you want me to wait till the copies are?
I think so. We give everybody an opportunity to look at it, and just as an explanation, what I think the chair is saying, the objection is, sometimes in court you can't present evidence that is hearsay when an expert, who created a traffic study or something is not available for cross-examination and so forth. Rules of evidence are not truly applicable in zoning hearing board cases, so oftentimes evidence is admitted that wouldn't be admitted in a court of law. But the board can give credence and give that evidence whatever weight they think it deserves based on, so certain hearsay evidence, a traffic study maybe that isn't specific to this property may or may not be given a lot of weight, depending on what the board in its discretion thinks, if it's really relevant and applicable, it can be given more or less weight. And of course, if the board did rely on hearsay evidence like this in its decision, it would need to point that out and to what extent it relied on it. Mr. Hodges, just to, sorry, I caught you off guard. Is this one document or is this several documents that you're presenting as a group?
It's my actual, what I'm saying. So
Okay.
you can follow along, and 3 documents with the traffic study.
Do you want to have this just marked as one exhibit, all as one?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll just call this Hodges Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
So I'm on the second page, which says traffic.
Thank you. Sure can.
So, to be clear, this is not the actual excerpt from the comprehensive plan. This is you retyping it into another document?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, a question for Mr. Hodges. I have no date on here or who conducted it, and I thought I heard you say 2008. It was,
2019.
I'm sorry, when?
2019.
Under the traffic section on the second paragraph, it's the 2019 Central Adams County Joint Comprehensive
On
Plan.
page 2, John.
One. Okay, please.
Ready to go?
Please
Okay.
continue.
The traffic. There is a high probability that the quantity of apartments and retail commercial space on this lot in this location will generate traffic patterns that will pose a substantial threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. 186 apartments and 8,000 square feet of commercial space. And then I say, I will quote here extensively from the 2019 Central Adams County Joint Comprehensive Plan. So this is their quote. Adams County's unique hub and spoke road network emanates from the Gettysburg Square, which serves as the hub. 13 historic road corridors spread outward from that point, forming the spokes. This network carries over 100,000 county residents, thousands of trucks, and millions of visitors annually. The presence of the Gettysburg National Military Park, GNMP, on the northern, western, and southern sides of Gettysburg adds a layer of complexity to the region's transportation network. Beyond the millions of annual visitors it generates, the GNMP and the Battlefield Historic District limit the ability to easily add new connections to the hub and spoke pattern. The result is a situation where all traffic is forced through the square, impacting quality of life for residents and quality of experience for visitors. One of the most common responses during the public involvement phases of this plan was the issue of too many trucks and too much noise along Route 30 through downtown Gettysburg. These corridors and intersections will need to be closely monitored for changing traffic volumes, travel patterns, and/or accident rates that could indicate growing congestion, or safety concerns, among others. Route 34, Carlisle Street, Gettysburg Square to Broadway. And then they had an exhibit. US Route 30, also known as Lincoln Highway, is the major east-west roadway in the region. Traffic volumes on Route 30 range from 6,000 to approximately 17,000 vehicles per day. In central Adams County, the roadway consists mainly of 2 travel lanes and no turning lane. In the eastern portion of Stratton Township, it has 2 travel lanes and a center turning lane. PA Route 34 provides a direct connection with Cumberland County, extending from Gettysburg north through Biglerville. Traffic volumes on this 2-lane roadway average approximately 9,300 vehicles per day between Gettysburg and Biglerville. Route 34 is also an important truck route, providing major fruit-producing facilities in Biglerville, Aspers, and Peach Glen, with access to Gettysburg and other points in South Maryland. And I have the attachments. Factors impacting traffic at proposed development: 186 apartments and 195 parking spaces, plus 8,000 square feet of restaurant and retail space, to be built on a lot bounded on the north by houses, no ingress or egress for vehicular traffic. An alley exists which may be blocked by development. 2, on the east by Stratton Street with up to 3,000 vehicles per day, houses and a bus station and a fire station. On the south by a house, a large parking garage, and the Lincoln train station, no ingress or egress for vehicle traffic, and 1 block away, York Street, Route 30, with an average of 17,000 vehicles per day. On the west by Carlisle Street with up to 9,000 vehicles every day, primarily apartment buildings. Additional factors impacting traffic at proposed development lot to be developed is directly adjacent to the Borough of Gettysburg parking garage, which has 356 spaces. Rabbit Transit bus transit station will be directly across Stratton Street from the development. Next to the transit station is a very large, busy fire and ambulance station, the Gettysburg Fire Department. Directly adjacent to the active railroad tracks are freight trains. Questions raised and issues to be resolved. There are no services north of the development other than one market without driving 7 miles to Biglerville. The hospital, post office, restaurant, stores are all south, east, and west of the proposed development. Traffic light at the intersection of Stratton Street and York Street, Route 30, is a no turn on red light and takes approximately 3 minutes to switch from red to green. And often no traffic can turn west due to the solid line of traffic completely filling the west lane, waiting to pass through Lincoln Square. There's no possibility of a traffic light at either the east or west proposed exit lanes from the proposed development, and cars will have to exit onto either Carlisle or Stratton Streets at their peril and be challenged by the delay from passing trains. There are no railroad crossing bars on either Carlisle or Stratton Streets. Development proposes to install a walk-through to and an elevator in the Borough parking garage. All traffic from the Borough parking garage is funneled out on 1 lane on Racehorse Alley east onto Stratton Street and is often backed up waiting for the light to turn green and move traffic off Stratton Street. Local residents can purchase a monthly parking pass for the Borough parking garage, and residents sometimes complain they're often forced to park on the roof of the garage because it is full. And then I have a couple questions. Part 15 of the special exception standards, 2715-1519 performance standards. No use or activity shall be permitted that will create any dangerous, injurious, noxious, or otherwise objectionable situation. Specifically, a use or activity shall not create an undesirable or dangerous traffic condition on the street or in a nearby area, or generate a nuisance to any nearby property because of increased traffic. So my question to the applicant would be, has there been any traffic studies done?
And to be clear, this isn't the time for you to ask questions of the applicant. This is your opportunity to present testimony. You can certainly call the applicant as on cross as a witness, I suppose.
Yeah, because at this point I just have questions, I believe.
Would you like to call the applicant as a witness?
Sure.
You have to call a person,
Oh.
not a witness.
Can I call the applicant to the, I guess, to the stand, or?
Who's the person that
Mr.
you want
Harris,
to
do you-
cross-examine?
Mr. Harrison. You want Mr. Harrison or Mr. Tweedy were the two witnesses? Is Mr. Harrison?
Mr. Harrison.
Should I come to the table, or?
Yeah, I think that would be best
Okay,
so
Mr.
that the
Goodman.
stenographer can hear you.
All right. Good evening.
And just for the record, Mr. Harrison, you were sworn June 28th, you were sworn in, and you remain under
Yes,
oath.
yes, thank you.
Mr. Harrison, thank you. So have any traffic studies been done?
No,
In your grant application, you referred to a PennDOT approval process. What is that, and has it been done?
which grant application?
No grant application is in the record for for this witness to refer to. Did the objector bring a copy of it?
No, I don't have that.
Oh, then I don't know how the witness can intelligently answer the question if he
Okay.
doesn't have a document to refer to.
Okay, thank you. Regarding the step-back variance application, how many acres are included in your lot? The total lot?
I don't think that was testified to by Mr. Harrison. That was Mr. Tweedy's department as a civil engineer. And I think it's shown on our exhibits anyway.
I mean, Mr. Harrison, you can answer it if you know, and if not, the answer is I don't know.
I wouldn't want to answer incorrectly.
Okay. Do you plan to purchase any adjoining properties, or are you negotiating with anyone to do so?
Yes, I've had discussions with others.
Can you speak up, please?
I have had discussions with one other neighboring property owner.
Thank you.
I think that's all the questions I have for him.
Thank you.
So in conclusion, I've read the variance application. Thanks. And I'm certain you've not met all the 5 requirements, and certainly not the hardship requirement. The law is well established that the hardship must be unique to the property itself, and that a variance should only be given in cases of practical necessity and for reasons that are substantially serious and compelling. And an applicant must demonstrate something more than a mere desire to develop a property as it wishes, or there will be financially burdened if the variance is not granted. And I think I'm going to end there. Okay.
Okay.
Hey,
Well,
does
thank
the
you, Mr.
applicant have
Hodges.
any, let's let the applicant cross.
Thank you. Mr. Hodges, were you here at the last hearing?
Yes, I was.
Did you hear Mr. Tweedy's testimony regarding section 27-1704B?
Yes.
And would you agree that the criteria set forth in that section, I think there's a dozen or so, are of more of a general nature and less specific?
I'm not really sure how to answer it. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm commenting on something, but I really don't know how to answer that question.
Well, in the criteria listed in 1704B, do you have that handy? Do you have those handy?
I don't think so, no.
Well, you referenced the list in the
But I don't have it.
zoning hearing board application.
Because that's not in my packet.
It's in the packet.
You say it is.
What do we?
I only have what you gave me for today.
Did you hear Mr. Tweedy testify about 1704B?
Yes, I believe I did.
Do you know if a traffic study is required at this juncture to receive a special exception or a variance application?
I would not know how to answer that, no.
I'm sorry?
No, I would not know how to answer that.
So a portion of the comprehensive plan traffic section that you left out was T5.2. And are you aware that it says that the corridors and intersections will need to be closely monitored for changing traffic volumes, traffic patterns, and/or accident rates that could indicate growing congestion and safety concerns?
He said that.
Okay, was that included in your presentation?
Okay.
Okay, excuse me, I'm just getting this for the first time here this evening. Mr. Hodges, how do you think that the traffic volumes for this project are going to be significantly different for a 48-foot building versus a 72-foot building?
I think that when he testified, Mr. Harrison, in the last meeting, he said he needed to do 72 feet to do the 186 apartments. And if it was lower than that, he wouldn't be able to do that many apartments. So the difference between 42 feet is way less apartments, or I don't know exactly how many. 186 apartments is 186 citizens times probably 2 or more, which could be up to 350 cars trying to leave that area. Plus the restaurant and the shopping could be 500 cars.
So with the additional units between 48 feet and 72 feet,
Correct.
your testimony is that's going to provide additional traffic in the area?
Correct.
And what negative impacts is that additional traffic going to be?
Backed up traffic, safety issues.
And you are a traffic engineer?
I am not.
Okay, did you have any traffic studies done to justify that statement?
No.
Okay.
I just work on York Street. I see it every day.
So you've not commissioned any traffic studies to justify your statements?
No.
It's a layman's opinion.
Yes.
So your statement at the beginning of your written materials was that there is a high probability that the quantity of apartments and retail/commercial space in this lot, in this location, will generate traffic patterns that will pose a substantial threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the community. You don't have any studies or expert justification for that statement, correct?
No, I'm going on my testimony.
So it's your opinion?
Yep, my opinion.
Your layman, non-expert opinion?
Yes.
Okay. And to be clear, the excerpt that you gave from the Adams County Joint Comprehensive Plan was not the entire 11 pages of the traffic section, correct?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a segment.
It's pieces that you picked and chose
Correct.
to present.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to renew my objection. I'm not able to cross-examine anyone on this traffic study, and the testimony is not of an expert quality or material to meet the special exception requirements for the general criteria that the ordinance contains.
We hear your objection. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Hodges? Any members of the board? This board? None? Okay, the
Well, I
board
just
has
have a
no-
quick comment. I mean,
please.
and Mr. Butterfield and I go back a long way in terms of wanting to see development in what used to be called the Ready Project. We have always worked on the premise that there would be apartments, we hoped there would be retail, and we expected there would be traffic. Under our zoning, that is not necessarily a problem. Where Mr. Hodges is making a case is that this is more housing, more apartments, and 7 stories instead of our typical. I think the problem we have with this discussion is that there's really no evidence that we can work with right now to say that this is the straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of traffic that could come. I personally am disappointed the borough didn't ask our applicants for a traffic study that they could get experts to provide us, but that's really not at issue here. I just don't, at this point, see that those extra, that we have evidence about those extra apartments as making this a threat to public safety. This is just my comment also as a layman, Mr. Hodges. So it's useful information, and anybody who lives in the borough of Gettysburg would agree with you that we have a lot of traffic and that we do have problems at the corner of Stratton Street and York Street, no question about that. But I can't take your testimony, and say, therefore I know this is not acceptable, because I don't see any real firm evidence that would make me say that.
You'll get an opportunity. Mrs. Thea, you'll be next after Mr. Hodges, and then you can address all of this.
Could I ask Mr. Hodges a question?
Let's get Mr. Hodges done, and then you can ask him a question. You could call him as a witness and ask him a question about this. I just want to keep this in order. Mr. Hodges is presenting testimony and asking the questions, and I guess answering the questions because he was a witness. I guess he was a witness. I'm sorry, Mrs. Thea. I guess you can cross-examine him on.
Yeah.
He's his own witness, so yes.
So I may ask
Yeah, that's
Mr. Hodges a question?
sure. Yeah, I think that is appropriate.
Mr.
actually.
Hodges, do you have the Berman case in front of you? It was a case in York County, something similar, 186 apartment units.
Okay.
Which the finding on that case, I believe, was that it was detrimental to the health and welfare of the community, a community in York County. Can you present that? So the finding in that case, if I understand it, is that those 186 residential units on that road at that time in York County was enough. It created enough traffic and repeat visits to that road where the zoning hearing board rejected the special exception. Is that correct, or will you?
Should we put this in evidence also then? I don't know.
I'm going to object to its relevance.
Yeah.
I think you can, as part of what you're arguing, Mr. Hodges, you can certainly provide the citation to whatever case you would like the board to consider.
This is a case in York County, like Ms. Tia said, that was 186 units also.
Give the caption for the case.
Berman versus Manchester, TZHB.
How you spell Berman?
B-E-R-M-A-N. Manchester, M-A-N-C-H-E-S-T-E-R, TZHB.
And was there a case number, Mr. Hodges?
Number 947 CD.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Number 947 CD.
CD?
Civil docket,
Civil, yeah.
and then there should be a year.
1987.
Is that 1987?
Yeah.
Okay, does anybody else have any
Further questions?
questions of Mr. Hodges?
Okay, is there anything else further that you'd like to present?
No, I'm finished.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your listening.
At this point, Ms. Linda, are you prepared to make your,
I want to go back to the last zoning hearing meeting where,
Ms. Tia, could you either sit here or step to the podium, just so,
no.
just for the microphones, and just
Sure.
for the records, you were sworn in at the June 28th date
Yes.
and remain under oath.
yes. I'd like to go back to some of the testimony from the last zoning hearing meeting where Mr. Harrison or someone on his team stated that the current transit station will be moved at no cost to the transit station. My question is, who will be paying for the moving of the transit station should you grant that variance, the height variance? Who will be paying for that? The moving of the transit station, the demolition of the transit station. Will you be paying for that privately?
Are you calling Mr. Harrison as a witness?
Yes.
Is that, so you're, okay.
Well, let's get that on the record then.
Okay,
She's
so Mr.
calling
Harrison is your witness, and you're asking him who is responsible for paying for moving the transits?
Yes.
First of all, it was asked and answered, but to the extent that there isn't a record of what Mr. Harrison said on this, so you can answer again.
The answer is that is a cost of the project.
I couldn't hear.
The answer is that is a cost of the project.
I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Right, right.
Who is paying for it? Are you paying for it?
The project is paying.
The project, is that federal or state funds? Were you was that a grant? What do you mean the project is paying for it? I don't understand. Who exactly is paying for the demolition of the transit station?
Project.
The project. Did you receive any grants to demolish the transit station?
The project has received some conditional commitments for grant support.
And what is the amount of the awards that you received to demolish and move the transit station?
They're not specifically tied to that.
What is the amount of the awards you received in total for this entire project from state grants?
I'm going to object to the relevance of this line of questioning, which has nothing to do with the difference between 48 and 72 feet, or a variance from step back requirements or height variance for the transit center. She's talking about how the project is financed, paid for by private funds or government grants or a combination thereof. Has nothing to do with the special exception of the variances we're requesting. It's irrelevant.
I'd like to enter into evidence.
Maybe, Mr. Tia, we have an objection that should be responded to. Maybe Mr. Tia could explain why her question is relevant.
I find that my question is relevant because when asked at the last zoning hearing meeting why he had to go up 72 feet and 12 for mechanicals and have 186 residential units plus an additional 9,000 square feet for commercial space or more, why? What would be the impact if he did not receive these variances or the step back? So a different interested party asked the question, and the answer was financial, more or less, that he had to build at 72 feet in order, I'll paraphrase, to be viable, you have to go up 72 feet, 12 for mechanicals, and build 186 residential units. So my question is to financial. I have in front of me where he applied and was awarded over $4 million. And when I asked last time, they said, oh, they didn't want to answer. So I find that if he's stating the only way to build this project out and he must receive these variances or the step back, and I think you believe it could be a financial hardship, it's hard for me to fathom if he was awarded millions in grants, how you must build at that height, that you must give the step back so that he can go up higher. So.
My response is the step back has nothing to do with the height of the building. The step back variance is a totally separate item here, which allows more sunlight, less shadow, and more green space to surround the building, rather than building out to its full 5 foot off the property line setback. The special exception for the height, as Mr. Teeter noted, a special exception is not special nor an exception. It's a use allowed by right in the borough if certain criteria are met.
And those are
We presented testimony that we meet 3 out of those 4 incentive criteria to go higher than 72 feet. And under that scenario, it's a use that's allowed. That has nothing, and none of this has anything to do with the financing, except for the fact that Mr. Harrison did testify that at 48 feet, the project is not viable. It's not feasible.
Do you have that accounting that it's not feasible at the 48 feet?
Not relevant. The Borough Council has stated in their ordinance that a 72-foot high building is allowed if the criteria are met.
And we say that A through L for the special exception. Mr. Hodges just spoke to A through L, that for a special exception, you did not fill that out on the application, and the application should be voided just on the face of it because you didn't meet all the criteria of a special exception.
And we presented testimony at last time's hearing extensively on that section.
But you did not meet the criteria A through L. I know you're going for a special exception for height, but you also have to meet the criteria for the special exception period, which you have not met.
We'll have to agree to disagree on that and let the board decide.
I think it's up to the board whether they want to go down this road. I don't know that financing of the project or the profitability of it has anything to do with the special exception. But you guys can.
I agree, it's not relevant.
We have nothing to do with finance.
So our consensus is that financing is not going to be relevant for us.
So you don't want me to, so you don't want this as evidence, as an exhibit, his application for over.
I don't think that and I think the board has ruled on this, that the financing, how the project's being financed is not relevant to the application. And the testimony about financing in the day one of the hearing, I mean, to the extent we're looking at variances here as to the step back requirement or something, I mean, I think the board knows this. We've had this question before. The hardship has nothing to do with a financial hardship, so it's not really, none of it's really relevant to the discussion. Anyway, the financing of it, I think we just need to move on. Be my suggestion.
The consensus of the board is just that the financing is not.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ms. Linda. We very much appreciate that.
Mr. Williams, do you have any cross?
I do not.
Board?
Did the board have any other further cross? Okay, at this point then, is there anything else that that the applicant or would like to present? Is there any other additional testimony or evidence that either the interested parties or the applicant would like to present at this point?
And just to be clear, our rules allow the applicant to present additional testimony by way of rebuttal, and then.
Essentially rebuttal, yeah.
Can I have a moment?
Sure. Sorry, Roger, is that okay with you?
Sure. Should we take a brief, break here? Adjourn briefly?
Yeah, why don't we take,
Why don't we, okay, adjourn for 5 minutes here?
Sure.
Okay, we don't need a motion or anything for that, do we? Let's just adjourn and restart here. It's 8:15, 8:14, restart at 8:20. We're going to call the meeting back to order. Take an extra couple minutes there. Okay, first, thank you, everyone. Please do be seated. At this point in our procedures, we'd like to offer the opportunity for public comment. Anybody who would like to make an open comment. I would, given the fact that it's already 8:30, everybody's comment needs to be brief, limited to 2 to 3 minutes at the most. And I do want to emphasize this to anybody who would like to make public comments. First, make sure when you identify yourself that you've signed in and given your address and all your personal information. The second thing is, in terms of decision-making, only sworn testimony can be actually considered for as evidence in terms of decision-making, but public comment is, of course, valuable and necessary. So at this point, I'd like to open the meeting for anybody who would like to make public comment. Let's try and keep this public comment period to, as I say, it's 8:20-something, to no later than 9 o'clock. So again, if everybody could keep their comments to 2 to 3 minute range, that wants to make comments, that would be very much appreciated. Okay.
Roger, I just wanted to add,
Please.
because we're at the community television here, but that comments should be made at the podium so that there's a microphone.
Yes. Okay. And you, of course, identify yourself and indicate that you've signed in. At this point, is there anybody who would like to make public comment? Please.
My name is Wesley Heiser. I live at 226 North Stratton Street here in the
Hi,
borough.
Wes.
I served on the Borough Council. I served on the Borough Council in 2018 when this ordinance was adopted. This was a discussion that encompassed approximately 18 months. Many of the objections that have been raised and comments that have been made in this venue were appropriately addressed during that time period. It was a contentious time in terms of reaching an outcome of that ordinance. Some of those that had differences of opinion on the contents of that ordinance remain in this room now, and were here then. That was the appropriate time and venue. I'd like to express that the borough, as a government, created a set of regulations for whatever developer would have purchased the property to operate within. We did not know Mr. Harrison at that time. He took an option on the property during that process, seeing what was occurring here in the borough, and eventually came to purchase and own the property. So in terms of the legislative intent, which I would comment to, the proposal that I've seen from Mr. Harrison fits well within the parameters that were set by the Borough of Gettysburg, and that was the time for the Borough of Gettysburg, their council, to speak as elected officials. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to make public comment at this point? Please.
I'm Lois Starkey. I had a business here in town for years. I come here every single day to do business in Gettysburg. I've lived in Adams County for over 35 years. I just would plead to this board to look at the application that has been submitted. I don't believe it's complete. I don't believe that hardship has really been demonstrated. I don't believe that the developer has made a good argument for completely changing the character of our community. We can have multifamily housing. It doesn't have to be 72 feet. We can have affordable housing. This developer has no proposal for affordable housing. I am not opposed to this developing a multi-use commercial property, but I don't believe that either the borough or this board or even the planning commission have done their due diligence. And I would plead that you do that. We don't need to rush into this. Times have changed since we started this effort. Before COVID, before a lot of things have changed. Before, we have issues like increasing affordable housing, increasing traffic, increasing tourism. So I would just plead that you do your due diligence, and I don't believe that you've done it. I don't see in what I have seen in the public docket that there is a complete application, for example. Does this proposal meet the comprehensive plan proposed by the county or recommended by the county? Does it meet the comprehensive plan of the borough? Does it meet the community objectives, community development objectives that are outlined in the borough municipal code? If you look at that, you will see that it doesn't. So please, take your time, do your due diligence. Thank you. And thank you for your work and your commitment to making our community a great place to live.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I'm Charles Strauss. I live at 43 West Broadway, and I'm also the chair of the Planning Commission and serve on the Stormwater Authority. And since the Planning Commission came up a few times today, I just wanted to clarify our process, mostly for the public. On June 20th, the Planning Commission met, and anytime a zoning hearing is scheduled, they ask the Planning Commission and HARB to provide input. And so we were on our agenda told that there was going to be a zoning hearing, and we had that one meeting, June 20th, to make input. We studied the plan very carefully, we studied the application very carefully, and then we crafted our comments. Several of us on that board had been on the board in 2018 when this first came up, and were, to be honest, and the record is clear, opposed to the zoning changes that passed in 2018. I was also on council in 2018 and opposed that. However, the ordinance is the law that governs our borough, and so our planning commission carefully studied the application in reference to the ordinance that is in our book of ordinances. So I just wanted to close by saying that when we drafted our suggestions, we clearly stated, and you have these here and Carly has them, that in our estimation at that meeting, it appeared, and we use that word, it appeared that the applicant met the conditions for the special exception and the zoning variances. However, it would be up to the zoning hearing board to conclude finally that that was the case. And there was some unanswered questions at the planning commission meeting for the applicant. There were some meetings that hadn't happened yet, but that they were committed to happening before the hearing. And so we took that position, and we took a very similar position, or the HARB took a very similar position, that we did not see objections. It appeared that it met, but it was ultimately going to be the zoning hearing that would have to check the evidence. So I wanted to clarify that process.
Thank you, Charles. Yes, sir, please.
My name's Carl DeMarco, and I am a student at the college, but I've been coming to Gettysburg for on and off for 10 years. It's been a second home for me and is now my first, and hopefully will be for a very long time. Prior to attending college, I worked in my own municipality's planning and zoning board, and I have to say that while the laws were different in the state of New York, what I have noticed, at least reading the materials and following, is that I would agree with our lovely speaker before that due diligence has not been done on many parts of this borough council, of this board, and of the planning board. Now, your job is very hard, and I would not want to be in your shoes. I know the work that you do because I've worked closely with both planning and zoning boards. But as you make your decisions, I want you to keep a couple things in mind. This borough, since the 60s, has been trying to reimagine itself, restore itself to what it was, and make it a more friendly place for people to live, work, and visit. The fact that there was no traffic study done by the borough or by the applicant is very alarming to me. I go up and down Stratton Street many times, and the traffic there already is terrible. We cannot comment, and we cannot know for sure what the impact of almost 500 cars will be officially, but you know what it is in your heart and in your mind because you live here in the borough. So keep that in mind as you're making these decisions. Keep that in mind when you're approving this, that we have sidewalks that are not even ADA compliant because we don't have the funds for them, but we are granting a developer a free tax base for that will shrink our tax base for the next 10 years and will lower the amount of funds we have to improve basic sidewalks that tourists use every day. Please carefully think about the decision you're about to make. Consider every facet of it, not just the business side, not just the tourist side, not just the residential side. Take it all into consideration, because what you are about to do could possibly have a large impact on this town, on this borough, after you're gone and after I'm gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public, yes, sir, please.
Yeah, I wasn't planning on speaking, so I apologize if this is a bit off the cuff, but I'm Zeev Karmi, and I am also a college student, and I'm a bicyclist. I just want to reiterate what my friend Carl just said and what that lovely woman in wearing red said, in that I really think it's quite alarming, frankly, that there has been no traffic study. Whether that's blame, who's to blame, doesn't matter. But I think, again, it's something that needs to be considered before this zoning project is approved. As a bicyclist, I have had to deal with very heavy traffic. And quite honestly, there have been points where I've been afraid because the traffic is so heavy. Drivers can be reckless. I think all of us as residents of the borough can agree. Drivers can be reckless sometimes around here. And we don't know what the impact of this new influx of cars will be. The law is the law. I agree with that. Ordinances are ordinances, but it's something I strongly recommend everyone to just keep in mind before making a final decision. We don't know what might happen, and I think it's something worth investigating. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, and thank you for volunteering your time.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Anyone?
Oh, well.
Please.
I don't like to speak in public, but I took a couple notes here. First, I'm Janice Ford. I live on East Water Street, which is about 2 blocks from our upcoming debacle. I have a dog. I walk that area 2 or 3 times a day, every day. So I see and I hear a lot. I had a question about what Mr. Strauss said. It sounded like the 2 other boards said that the requirements appeared to be met, but that there was going to be some other information coming from the applicant or another meeting maybe before this meeting, and it wasn't clear. Did that happen? So that was a question. I mean, he said they approved it because everything appeared to be okay, but they had a couple other questions. Applicant had to say answer a couple things, and I believe you said maybe other meetings before this meeting, but he did not say that happened or not.
Ma'am, substantive issues will be discussed before HARB and before the planning board in wake of this meeting. So it's not done. It's not a done deal. There are issues that the applicant will be discussing with the board. They'll be asking questions. So you heard correctly that they will be having another bite at the apple.
Well, I understood him to say it would happen before this meeting. You guys are not the final decision maker tonight?
We're a decision maker about this particular piece of the puzzle.
Okay. So these 3 variances then?
Correct.
That's it. Okay. Well, my main complaint, because I'm not all versed on the technical aspects of heights and mechanicals and step backs and whatnot, but I can tell you about the transit center. We have a lovely, well-built, well-maintained transit center. I walk by and I hear visitors say, "Oh, what a cute little bus station they have." It has a spacious, plenty of room on the entrance and the exit driveways, plenty of space on the sides and in the back for all the buses. It's beautifully landscaped, has quality benches and bike racks. Again, it's spacious and attractive to the residents and the visitors. Why should we give that up and allow someone who only has dollar signs in mind to tear that down to the dirt and then go across Stratton where that little tiny bit of land, the only thing that's there, you have the railroad track and then a line of trees and bushes, which probably belongs to the railroad company, and you can't do anything with that. Then you have that little parking gravel area that might be wide enough for 3 cars lengthwise. Then you have that historic building, that white house that was built in the 1800s. So you're gonna let them do what? Put a little concrete block building in there? They don't even want it to be 24 feet tall. So, you know, who's gonna police the developer on what goes in there? So, I just think that's a waste, and a big waste of state grant money. That's what I believe Linda was getting at. A huge waste of grant money that could be better used, tax money, what have you. So, and when you talk about not having traffic studies, you know, that's not the residents' fault. When the quality of life goes to the toilet and that whole little area there, all you board members are going to be the one that people will remember that's who did it, not the developer, because they're going to be in New York or Connecticut. All of these different board members are going to be in Gettysburg. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we still have some time for additional public comment if anyone would like to. Any? Okay, well, at this juncture, the time for the public comment is concluded. Now, I wanted to note here that that essentially concludes the zoning hearing board portion of the public hearing. Pardon me?
I think we're going to allow Mr. Williams.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, that's correct.
closing
Yeah.
argument.
If any closing argument from, we will do that, allow any closing argument from the applicant.
And the parties too, I'm
Yes.
sure.
And the parties, right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for your time and attention during the past 2 meetings. To draw your attention back to why we're here, special exception, which allows for the increase of height of the building from 48 feet to 72 feet, as outlined in the borough's ordinances for that height incentive by special exception. The second is a variance to eliminate the step-back provision for the buildings. And third, a variance on the minimum height of the transit center, the relocated transit center. The specific criteria set forth in the ordinance for the special exception. And the criteria for special exception is what they're all about, is meeting the criteria. And there were 3: internal parking, the inner loop connection, and the transit center relocation. Each one had specific requirement. Probably the internal parking was the most technical, in that it required 25% of the project's parking to be internal. And we showed with expert testimony and documentation evidence that will be the case. The inner loop connection you saw in the plans and by testimony that the connection to the Gettysburg inner loop will be made. And third, you heard testimony and demonstrated on the plans where the transit center will be relocated. We have documentation from Rabbit Transit that they are consenting to that change, and it's at no cost to Rabbit Transit. So some Borough Council has spoken about this issue. We are merely following the ordinance as it's been written to meet the requirements for the height special exception. Each criteria has been met of the 3. The step-back variance is done to improve the project, frankly. You heard testimony about how we could have built the lower levels of the building, the first 48 feet, out to within 5 feet of the property line. Instead of doing that, we are stepping the entire building back, in some cases 30 feet from the property, 35 feet from the property line, to allow more green space, more sunlight, less shadow, better transitions of building height in the area, better circulation patterns, and we feel that this more than meets the intent of the ordinance is to open the site up and make it more attractive and livable. The third, the minimum height variance for the relocated transit center. The difference between the current transit center and the relocated transit center, we're asking for a 6-inch difference. This zoning hearing board already approved a variance for the existing transit center. What we're asking for is merely 6 inches lower. We could call that de minimis, and I'm going to ask the board that they deem it a de minimis variance. What we're actually asking for is a 2.5-foot variance from 24 feet down to 22.5. But the difference between the existing transit center and the new transit center would be 6-inch difference. So in that respect, it's a de minimis change. The primary hardship, as we see it, for both the step back provision and the height variance, especially if you don't deem the height variance to be de minimis, is that this lot is it's a redevelopment project. The site is what it is where it is, it's the configuration that it is. We are trying to mold a quality project into a site that that exists, and using the Borough Council's ordinances to fit it onto that site. And that requires, in some cases, some give and take and adjustments. We think the adjustments, the variances that we're asking for, are quite minimal and indeed improve the project over what it would be otherwise if we followed the ordinances to the letter. Many of the concerns raised last hearing and tonight are land development issues. I think that there's a misunderstanding by many about what this board's role is in making a decision on the special exception variances. You don't hold all the authority to approve this project. You have a small slice, a small piece of the puzzle, as was said earlier. But traffic concerns, the SALDO, your subdivision land development ordinance, requires us to mitigate traffic. That's not something that the zoning hearing board does or has an expertise or authority to do. That's Borough Council and the Planning Commission to make sure the traffic is mitigated in accordance with the SALDO. And many other factors, police and fire protection, stormwater controls, things like that. How the building will look, that's HARB. These are all things that come during the land development phase, which we won't be entering until we clear the zoning hurdles, which is why we're before you now. So in summary, I appreciate the time. We're passionate about this project. I'm sure that's come through. We think it's a quality project that will be good for the borough. And Mr. Harrison is excited to get started on it. That next step would be the land development process, which, as you know, having worked in this area and volunteered in this area for many years, that's going to be a detailed, dot the I's, cross the T's process. This is not the end of the story. This is merely the beginning. But I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you.
I would just like to thank you for your time.
Anything no further comments at this point? Okay, you're closed then.
Yep, thank you.
Well, thank you. At this point, the zoning hearing board is allowed to meet an executive session, even given the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act and all that. We're allowed to meet in executive sessions, and any of the board members choose to wish to do so, or the solicitor wishes to do so. So at this point,
Mr. Chairman, where does the opportunity for members of the board to ask questions come into play?
At this final session here, if you.
Yeah, I mean, you just said we're going to go into executive session, but are we doing questions now, or are we going to ask questions after executive session?
No, I mean, well, let me step back. If there's any questions that you have at this point for the applicant, please.
Well, I have questions, and maybe
Please.
some of my colleagues do. I'd like to start with a clarification from the attorney, Mr. Teeter. According to point 4 of the application, the applicant is supposed to describe how the variance will impact the neighborhood. And it says here, buildings were designed to honor the scale and the streetscape of the surrounding properties. But I would think that part of what certainly HARB is going to have to deal with is the question of whether the design is in conversation with what our historic built environment looks like. So in what way is this not pertinent to our discussion tonight? Since we don't have a design, what we have is a number of cubes that are placed where the location for the buildings intends to be.
Yeah, I think that's something we touched on the June 28th a little bit, and I've made comments here. I didn't write this ordinance. I don't want to be critical of those that were involved in crafting it because it was, I think, a ongoing process, and in hindsight, perhaps it would be written a little bit different, and we have that issue of you know, I think I've variously said it's a chicken and egg thing or a cart before the horse thing, and that's something that I think that the board can discuss in its deliberations. To what extent the evidence was presented deals with that issue, and to what extent it can't deal with that issue.
Okay. I mean, I do understand that HARB will be dealing with this. It's just, to me, just as a citizen, it's odd that something as important to our borough and to the, as several people said, to the future of our borough, that we are in the process of agreeing to support or deny this request without even knowing what these buildings are going to look like. And I'm not going to say here that this is my responsibility or this particular board's responsibility, because there may be different ways of interpreting what our obligation is here tonight. There are, as you said, Mr. Williams, different pieces of this puzzle, and you're trying to navigate them all. But for me, I just say, and I would think many people in the borough would say the same thing. We have a historic town with a particular built environment, and if we're going to just keep pushing this forward without knowing what we're getting, then we're headed for a potential problem. You know, the old Russian statement, trust but verify. We need verification of what we're going to get. Now, I could have that conversation with Mr. Schaefer and with the HARB members who are going to do their due diligence, and maybe that will be enough. But it is uncomfortable as a member of the zoning board to be doing my due diligence and not knowing what exactly it is we're going to see built on this particular property. And I just was curious because it does say, how will this variance affect the neighborhood? I have one other question, which is very small, and I hope that you can get an answer for it. It was actually raised to me as a question by a neighbor of on Stratton Street. I don't live on Stratton. I live on the northern end of town. And the neighbor said to me that they were concerned that the bus transfer station would be idling in front of houses on Stratton Street, particularly Colonel Sheed's house, which is immediately adjacent to the property that would be used for this turnaround. Do you have anything you could say in response to that question? Will there be buses idling in front of any houses, or will they all be handling their work on the turnaround?
So let me first ask, to clarify, you spoke to a member of the public outside the hearing process to formulate this question.
I guess you could say that. A person came up to me knowing I'm on the zoning board and said something to me. I didn't say I knew anything, so I'm asking the question. It wasn't like I pursued someone.
Just wanted to clarify where the question's coming from. The answer is that there will be a turnaround space provided at the new transit center. How Rabbit chooses to operate it is going to be their operation, not ours.
Okay. That's an answer.
allowed to speak to that? Just as I mentioned from the podium, as somebody who walks around there all the time, the Rabbit Transit Center does have buses idling there. That's the
I think
nature of the
I want to, the public comment period is over. We need to keep with our procedures and
Okay.
just moving along.
Did you have any other further things you wanted to ask, Mike?
Well, I'm going to ask this question of Ms. Marshall. In a document that she submitted to us, she says, "The plan presented does not give the feeling that there would be a large cubic building along the streetscape, something our ordinance was attempting to prevent." I don't know what that means, because I don't have a schematic.
Which document?
It's in the packet that you sent us, and it's page 2.
It's just the planning commission review.
It's the planning, you're the signatory to it. And are you just reporting what the planning commission said?
Correct. Yeah,
But-
those were the statements. for
But
the
if we
planning.
don't have a schematic for what the buildings will look like, how could we say it does not give the feeling that there would be large cubic buildings?
I think maybe Mr. Berkner would help if he looked at Exhibit A4, Sheet 7,
Okay?
which was introduced at the last hearing, as to why the massing of the buildings is not right at the street, or within 5 feet of the street right-of-way line.
That isn't what I was asking, though. That has nothing to do with, the placement of the buildings is not my question. It's the appearance of the buildings, that's my question.
Well, the elimination of the step back does,
Oh, I see, you're saying that eliminates the cubic look of the buildings by having the
right
step back?
at the within 5 feet of the property line or the street, yes. That gray area on sheet 7 in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh.
So what you're saying is not having this.
So, you see that on sheet 7, the upper right-hand corner?
I do.
So that gray block, that's area where we could build structure, but as it's labeled, allowable building mass not proposed to be constructed. So we're giving up space that we could otherwise take advantage of and build, but we're giving that up to create green space and airspace.
Oh, yeah, you did say, Mr. Williams, you did tell us that earlier in the testimony tonight, and I think we're all appreciative of that. I'm again referring to the fact that I really don't know what I'm going to see if this all goes through and you're building these buildings. I don't know what I'm going to get.
Up to the renderings, the other renderings in that exhibit?
Well, we were told that these were not what the buildings are going to look like.
Not the texture, the materials, the lighting. That's for Harb to assist us.
But the structures themselves will look like that.
The building massing, yes, that's where the buildings will be, or they're proposed to be. Placement versus streets and parking areas and each other.
Well, I guess I'm really confused now because this is not at all like what anything else in the borough looks like.
Well, Borough Council, because it's high, because it's tall?
No, because of the architectural design.
Well, again, Harb is going to have a say in the architectural.
All right, so you're saying that's not the last word. You're going to have a conversation with Hart about this.
Yeah, I think we presented testimony last time that.
Well, I think that goes back to my original comment, is that I don't actually know what we're going to see built. Because evidently what we're told is this is a placeholder until you have a conversation with Harb.
Yeah, that's the way the process works.
Well,
You get zoning relief, or.
I hope you have a very good conversation with Harb.
We can't go to Harb and ask for details on a 48-foot building when we really have applied for a 72-foot building. That's a difference, and Harb is going to have probably different reactions to 48 versus 72 and how they guide us in what the buildings actually look like, materials, textures, et cetera.
And mind you, I'm not taxing
Excuse me,
you.
there's a lot of ancillary conversation here. Everybody needs to be quiet and let the people who are actually speaking as part of this matter speak.
Mr. Williams, I'm not taxing you or criticizing you in any way about your 72-foot plan because the borough has its ordinances. We're following the ordinances. My concern had to do with the conversation that your buildings will have with the borough. I think that even though our piece of this puzzle has to do with the 3 points you've already discussed, I think a reasonable person would be concerned that that conversation is going to yield something that over the long term, residents of Gettysburg will be proud of, happy with, and feel congruent with the world that they have existed in for the last how many years. And I guess what this does, if we follow the law, we're going to have to put a heck of a lot of faith in the HARB that you're going to do right by Gettysburg.
And the Planning Commission and Borough Council.
Yeah, but in a way, council has already sort of done its deed. Planning Commission on land use, yes. HARB on design.
Borough Council will still have a lot of say in enforcement of their saldo ordinance.
Well, good. I'm not trying to be captious with you in any way. I think that any of us here on this board wants the best for this borough. And this is a big deal. And we need to ask the questions. And in the end, if you get, this to go through, you'll be better off for having had these conversations and address the issues that people care about. That's all.
Thank you, Lee. Okay. Regarding the executive session, is there anyone who'd like to make a motion, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that the Borough Zoning Hearing Board go into executive session.
Okay.
I'll second it. I'll second it.
Okay.
Can I just,
Please.
it needs to be made clear that the purpose of the executive session is for quasi-judicial deliberations and to receive legal advice from counsel.
Of council, exactly. And we will promise to get back to you with a decision or whatever, what the status of those discussions are.
Come back tonight, or?
Yeah, within the next.
If it doesn't,
Hopefully soon.
There's a couple.
I will say this, I had this discussion with Mr. Goodacre. I mean, if it does not appear that we're prepared to make a decision within a reasonable time period tonight, we may adjourn and come back a separate day to announce the decision.
All right, we'll stick around then.
So, if it gets.
Stick with us for half an hour or so, we'll make some determination about where we are.
I think it'll be loud enough.
Okay. Okay, at this point, then, the board is going to, the hearing is adjourned, the board's going to move to executive session, and we'll be back with a status update relatively shortly. Thank you. The call to order, we call the meeting back to order, post the executive session of the board. I'd like to report the board had fairly in-depth discussions, and we're going to need additional legal advice. This is going to require some research on the part of the solicitor, and he's going to undertake that right away, and we'll move forward as quickly as possible. Having said that, we probably will be in a position to announce a decision at what would be the next regularly scheduled meeting of this board, which would be Wednesday, June 26th.
July.
I'm sorry, I'm off by a month here, July 26th. July 26th. I'm looking at JU on the calendar up here and thinking June. But it'd be July 26th at 7 o'clock would be the normal time that the board would reconvene. And at that point in time, we will certainly have the decision available for public release.
The other thing I would add is, that we did have a good discussion. I think that everybody should know that the board wants to, this is a big deal. The board very much wants to get it right legally. And, having wait another 2 weeks for a decision is a bit anticlimactic after we've waited an hour for us in executive session, but we didn't want to keep everybody waiting longer when it was apparent that we just weren't at a point where there was anything we could vote on, that the board could vote on.
Mr. Chairman, would the board entertain submission of proposed findings of fact, conclusions of law, or memorandum of law, if it would help the solicitor or the board in its final decision?
Certainly. I would have no objection to that. Matt?
I don't have any objection to that. I will say that, we're going to continue the executive session, and then we obviously, when we regroup on the 26th, disclose that on the record, and the current plan would be that we're, going to meet before the end of the week. That doesn't mean that everything will be resolved by then, but I would say that the sooner that you could get, what time do you?
Thinking by the end of next week?
Is that protocol? Isn't this already over? Isn't it up for your decision? For him to offer more evidence, I think is completely inappropriate. I think you need to make your decision.
It's not more evidence.
Based on the facts that have been presented.
I will say this, for personal reasons, we're in a bit of a time crunch to get, even though we're not going to reconvene to announce the decision until, or to vote on a decision for 2 weeks. I don't know that anything that we get late next week is going to move I think the board has a very good handle on what the issues are, and I just need to clarify a few things for them. So I don't think it's I have no objection to it, but I don't, in all honesty, think it's going to be all that useful, because I think we'll be.
But this is memorandum of law, not what you.
It would either be a memorandum of law or proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law.
I would object to that.
That's a standard thing that is done.
We've already presented our evidence. They need to make a decision.
There's not going to be any more evidence, and to the extent that anything that would be presented in a findings of fact and conclusions of the law contained evidence outside of the record, it would be inadmissible. And Mr. Williams would, if he presented that, would have to serve it on every other party, and every other party would have the exact same opportunity to present findings of facts and conclusions of, or legal memorandum if it was submitted. I have no objection to it. It's clearly permissible, as long as every party has the same time period and every party serves it on every other party, with that caveat that, I don't know, based on our time constraints.
Please.
Let's say that's fine. If people want to submit proposed findings of fact.
Okay.
What would be the deadline then would you need to be helpful?
Like Wednesday of next week.
And that would be served on the other interested parties as well?
Yes, and I can take, I can make sure every party has every other party's contact information.
All right. Email address would be most helpful for quick service. I have.
Now, I can't say that I have the two parties in interest that did not attend tonight's hearing. I don't know that I have their email address. I do have Ms. Tia's. I do have Mr. Hodges. I obviously have yours, Mr. Williams. I think we do have Scott Hill's email address.
Yeah.
So what I could do is send out
Can you extend this? I mean, we've just prepared, it's taken us, this was so last second. We weren't even served the paperwork. We're interested parties. We find out about it, we show up. We've worked diligently to study this. We tried to get a traffic study done, we couldn't. Can you just extend this then? If we can submit other work, can you give us more time? We're not attorneys, nor do we have attorneys representing us. That's what he does. Can you extend this decision by, 30 days or so to give us some time to prepare? Please? I don't know what the legality is in order for you to make a decision. Don't you have like 45 days or so to render a decision? What is the rush? Can you give us some time to present more?
No, I think we're close the hearing today would be my suggestion. I mean, I don't think there's any more evidence that we need. It is, as Mr. Williams said, I mean, it depends on the issue, but in more complicated matters, it's not unusual for the board to accept proposed findings or legal memorandum. I mean, with the caveat that we're going to move quickly on this and that time spent on submitting findings and memorandum is going to be of limited usefulness, but to the extent that any party wants to submit a legal, and I would just say, I don't care. I mean, I'm just thinking about it. Honestly, just because of reasons that the board's aware of and my timing for getting this decision out, it will be out by the end of this month. It has to be out by this end of this month. So it's very limited opportunity for submission. But if anybody wants to submit proposed findings and a list of legal authority by Wednesday of next week.
Okay, then.
If the board is inclined to, or the board can just say, we're done and we have enough information and let's be done with it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to register my vote as everything that we have heard last time and tonight, and we will take no more documentation, evidence, whatever you want to call it. It's just going to draw this thing out as we look at everybody's evidence they give us, and we've got a situation where we need to, we've got to get this thing out by the end of the month.
Okay, would that be, John, a motion to not accept that at this point, just move with what we have?
I want to clarify, Mr. Teeter, you're saying that it would be standard to accept these things at this point for another week.
You know that we don't do this in most cases, but most cases aren't as complicated as this. It is done. It wouldn't be the first time that I've been involved. I don't know about with this board, but it's certainly acceptable. I just don't know, given the timing here, whether it's going to be very useful to the board or to me in advising the board. And I would be, it's really up to the board. I think it's of limited usefulness to me.
I would say that I would agree. My feeling would be it will be of limited usefulness, or likely will be, but at the same time, I wouldn't want to cut it off. So I would say that we give them the week until next Wednesday. I think that's reasonable.
Is there a second to that? Could we consider that a motion, Darren?
I'll second it.
Sure.
Okay, all those in favor?
What was the motion again?
I thought it was John that made the motion.
No, Darren just made a motion to accept.
What do you think John was doing?
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we accept no further evidence past what we have received tonight and move on to reach a conclusion, a judicious conclusion, based to the personal issues that we have coming up at the beginning of next month.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Anybody second that?
I rarely disagree with my colleague, rarely, but I'm not going to second his motion.
I guess I will move that we stick with the 1 week deadline that was proposed.
Second.
But this is not for new evidence, just to make sure I'm understanding right. This is for findings of law and whatever the other thing was.
Okay.
Conclusions of law, and I don't think we need a legal memorandum, just any legal authority that any party would want.
Okay, that motion's in front of us. Is there?
I second it.
seconded it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes, 7-5. Okay, at this juncture then, if we could please have a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Until July 26th. Well, let me confirm, until July 26th at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, you had already said that, Mr. Chairman, absolutely.
Okay, second for that, a motion?
Second.
All those in favor of that?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your attention and time tonight. We'll see everybody next 2 weeks from tonight.
And you'll be back.
Motion.